of the agenda, and then go from there. So we'll be going over the board committee assignments, try and close on those today in our final conversation as a new board. Have the county council review the board's rules and procedures and discuss any updates. Then we've got some syncing up conversation with our county administrator, Tanya Angie, on her work for the proposed budget. We'll have a second conversation with our director of the Equity and Community Engagement Department on our board community engagement goals for this year. And then we have some items that we were not able to get to in our long and topic-rich roundtable from February that we should checkpoint on again, or first, and try and close on those. So the first item on our agenda, beyond the agenda review, is to sync up on a few items. And we have a couple that are pretty timely. The first one is a proposed letter from us back to our community members who participated in the community investment conversation. We collectively were sent an email on Monday, I believe it was, that we touched on Tuesday, but not everyone had an opportunity to review that memo. I'm assuming that Elizabeth is participating in this meeting as well, as she authored the memo. I know I have a couple of comments on the letter, but the point is to try to come to closure today on that memo, so that it is a memo which is coming from us. So I want to make sure that it is one that we are satisfied with and proud of. So what are your thoughts? Any?
Chair, I'd like to hear your comments. Generally, I'm fine with
it. Well, I think it's a good memo. I especially liked the first paragraph on page 2 that talked about the information being instructive, so on and so forth. I think there is a typo in the second paragraph on that page, the very first sentence. We must acknowledge the broad spectrum of perspectives. But really, the main thrust is I'd like to see two text changes. The most important one for me is on the first page in the paragraph. It's like the third paragraph that starts with the words, with 81% of the attendees. Are you with me there? Yeah, the second line there, we can note certain directional findings. Well, we've been pretty clear with our community that we're looking for additional input on our budget. And the community investment conversation is one of many opportunities for gathering community input. And so I'm not comfortable with that word directional, because I think it's going beyond, we're the ones that provide direction to the CAO for crafting the proposed budget. So I would really like to see that word changed from directional to input. So that's the biggest change. I mean, like I said, this is a good memo and I like it. The other change that I'm thinking about is in the very first paragraph. As your Board of Commissioners, we want to first thank you for participating in our second annual budget input session, this year referred to Community Investment Conversation. So what I'm concerned about is if folks go back and look for the CIC information from last year, they won't find any, right? I love the phrase community investment conversation, right? And so I want to reinforce that, but I do want to give folks the opportunity of the journey. I realize I've just made the sentence longer. So really those are the extent of my comments. It's a good memo, and I think it does bring closure to this year's activity as we take that input and continue to engage with our CAO on the proposed budget all the way through our budget committee to adoption. That's it. Other thoughts and feedback? Go ahead, Commissioner Treese.
The one thing that I didn't see in there is perhaps a comment along the way that we are learning how to have these conversations, or we are, Elizabeth, it's more about the fact that our next conversation probably won't look like the former conversation, but it's an evolution in how we get information from our communities. That's one piece I didn't see in there, and I'd like to add that we're looking for the opportunity to get information from our residents from Washington County and be instructed by that information. So just in that we did adapt, taking the best.
I think that would be a really nice closing to the memo as well, because we are committed to continuing to improve and evolve our community engagement. Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Any other commissioners? Any changes needed, or are you good to go with what we've got?
I'm okay. I like the memo as it is. It's my first time participating in this format, so and I like the clarification you made in the first sentence, because I learned something new as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you, Elizabeth, for putting this together with the team and getting it out there. Really appreciate it. Okay. The second thing that I think we need to make sure we're all set on, I'm glad Elizabeth is here again, is the town hall this Saturday. I think Elizabeth has been working with the team on the content, the visuals to help support our conversation. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, well, it's coming up on Saturday, and you probably sent us a run of show memo at some point, but I'm pretty much drowning in my inbox. Will a reminder of that be coming between now and Saturday? Go ahead.
Yeah, so you will schedule for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So you'll have both the run of show, external and internal, so you know what staff is doing, as well as just an info packet with some helpful FAQs. So.
Terrific. Does anyone have any further questions or information needs beyond what's coming? Sounds good. Sounds like a great plan, Elizabeth. Looking forward to it. The next item is I forwarded to you all, about a week or so ago, that the AOC Board of Directors and the Legislative Committee are planning to institute a different rotation for the legislative steering committees. My concern is that it really spreads the meeting set across a different set of days. Just two of the steering committees, and there are many, have meetings outside of Mondays once a month. So Mondays have historically had almost all but two, Veterans and Health and Human Services, steering committees meeting on Monday mornings. And now they're looking at rotate or distributing them across Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Mondays. And I know in having our board composition over these many decades that the chair is usually the one that has been actively involved, though all commissioners have had the opportunity to serve on all those steering committees. So I wanted to just make sure I brought this forward to you, because if you do have interest area in these different steering committees, it's going to impact your own committee representation and schedule. So I wanted to make sure I did my part in bringing that forward to you, because it will be coming back for discussion at the AOC Legislative Committee and Board meeting this upcoming Monday. Thoughts? And it's okay to have no opinion too. Okay. All righty. And the last item that I thought of is Ms. Angie and I were talking about how we have different mechanisms in place to help with our time and our policy assistance. And with new policy assistance and further expansion of the team across all commissioners, I'd like to pose that it would be great if we could get our policy assistant team to produce a weekly memo that pulls together the full list of external meetings that commissioners have across the current week and the upcoming week. It certainly helps with having all of our deputies and department heads understanding what kind of meetings we're striving to support throughout our community. It also helps ensure you've got visibility into who I'm meeting with and vice versa. So if you have any questions, or if I forget to mention something, that tickler exists. Is that something that as you work closely with your policy assistants, that getting the three of them to put that together for a single email across the whole BCC CAO office team would be useful? Well, I don't hear any reasons why we shouldn't at least try it. So
I was just going to ask Jerry, it seems to me that we started doing that with Alex, and I'm not sure why we stopped. So,
right.
you know, my guess is that it's an appropriate role for Megan, and I'm comfortable with that if you are, Jerry.
Yeah, I am. I want to be a little bit sensitive to capacity at this point in time, especially for Megan. She's working really hard to get up to speed on Pam and I's calendars. But it's always good to know, I guess, where the commissioners are from the standpoint of if there's anything that comes up in my constituency that maybe Roy certainly has knowledge on. It's good to know what meetings he's been attending on that. So yeah, and vice versa. So I'm okay with that.
Well, we'll leave it to them to figure out how to have the efficient logistics so that we don't end up with 5 different sets of emails. I think it would be great if we have just the one collection, and how they figure it out so that it's efficient for them is wonderful. So cool. All righty. So those were all the quick sync up items that I had in addition to the agenda. I forgot to mention for this meeting, for sync up or for information sharing, I sent out a new document the a decade planning document. That's something that helped me get my head around the sequencing of major programs that we've been talking about and how that might lay out. You have the updated roundtable agenda, which we've delayed the April roundtable topic to meeting to later in the month to work with Commissioner Rogers' work schedule and needs, canceled the May meeting, canceled the July meeting, and then sequence out to represent our yearly rhythm. So that's what that update is about. Then from our February 4th conversation, I took the items and from our roundtable conversation on board initiatives and just finalized that information. And then we had also gone over the timeline, business calendar, the standard, as well as the unique one for 2021. So I just made the final updates to that from the January roundtable. So those were just some document updates. And then as we received the email from CAO Tanya Angie, we have the roundtable, the rolling agenda months looking ahead as well. So that's just it for the list of documents that help us get our head around what's on our plate as a work group. So nothing that we need to take action on. It's just informational to help us. So, whew, I know it's a lot. We have a lot going on, as we've all mentioned from our briefings that we've had with staff, as well as our very full work session meeting. So, anything else? No? Great. Well, then we can dive right into our first agenda topic, and that is to go over our committee assignments for this year. In our packet, I know that we have the table that Elizabeth updated from our meeting in February. That starts in the PDF file on page 29. I also sent out a proposal for a strategic approach to our committee assignments. Would you like me to start with that and then go over the detailed list, or how would you like to approach this so we can close on these assignments? I'm happy to go over go ahead, Jerry.
I'd like to hear, I guess, some of your thoughts on your recommended committee assignments and whatever introductory information that you want to proceed on this. So,
Great.
Yeah, I'm ready to have the conversation.
Okay, Kevin, can you share the document that I sent out?
Yes, just give me 1 second, Madam Chair, and we will get that pulled up for you.
Great. So what I did was I took the information from our February conversation and the notes that I had taken from hearing various interests that you all had, both as we discussed there, as well as I've heard from you individually over the last few months, and reflected upon how we might approach this to look at the spread across all commissioners, your interest areas, as well as connecting up with the community as a whole, and the fact that we are a new board, we have new mayors, new city councils all across Washington County and the region. So we'll wait till Kevin can share the document. All right.
There we go. So you all see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you scroll down a little, please? So this goes over, oh, why don't I pull out my own hard copy of this as well? This goes over the multiple areas that that I think we've got going on as we do our work, both here in Washington County and across our region. So the main areas are affordable housing and homelessness as a strategic area, transportation, public safety, economic development, equity, and then we do an awful lot of work with our community service providers as well. So I took the information that we had from our board review and looked at the, reflected on the full collection. So you see, we've got a whole lot going on with many different areas. So this is just a proposal, as you've heard me say at least 2 times here and in my email that shared this. So I want to reflect that my appreciation for Commissioner Treese in helping to welcome our newest commissioner, Nafisa Faye, and making sure that she's clear that while she has been the board liaison to a couple of these committees, while she continues to be interested in the work, that she's has an open mind and an open heart with regard to sharing leadership opportunities. So Commissioner Faye has come up to speed very quickly on the different work areas and has let me know that she's perfectly willing to follow along, as many of us are, being an alternate in some cases and so forth. So based upon that, we know that for the whole affordable housing bond program, that the board is fully engaged in that, as is the board of directors for the Housing Authority of Washington County. Then we have specific liaison assignments to different committees, as you see here. I'll just go through and keep presenting the whole proposal, and then we can come back to thoughts and questions. In the transportation realm, there is a whole variety of different committees and a lot of change that has occurred across our community here in Washington County and across our region. Commissioner Rogers knows this full and well from having new city councils in Tualatin, for example, and how the Basalt Creek Parkway project is one where there's a lot of work needed to help ensure that the community connection is there. We've seen a lot of new faces across the region, as evidenced by JPACT with Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson, City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, and many others. We've also seen how the criteria for transportation decision-making has changed. So I do think that it's now is a very good time for us to help make way for some new leadership from us to be in line with how the ecosystem that we do our work has changed as well. So with this, I'm proposing that Commissioner Fye be our representative to JPACT. With that, it's very helpful to have the JPAC representative also follow with the chair of the Washington County Coordinating Committee. We do, for good process, need to make sure that we have an alternate there. Both Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Willie have great relationships, active relationships, and experience across the transportation realm with the mayors and city councils here in our area. The Tualatin Valley Highway Corridor Plan is a new project. It touches on 3 different commission district areas, so affects 4 of 5 of us. I think Commissioner Rogers is the only one not affected by that. And given the mileage extent of TV Highway and the degree of change, I thought that it might be useful to have both Commissioner Fye and Commissioner Willie co-chair that committee with Commissioner Treese as an alternate as well. The Region 1 Act, following on with the JPAC representation, I thought would be Commissioner Fye. Then we also have the Northwest Act with Commissioner Willie, ROMAC, which touches mostly on Commissioner Willie's district, though it also touches Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Treese's districts, and my own, of course, but the Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee touches mostly on Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Fye's, so you see that recommendation. And then Commissioner Rogers has been also with the Transit Committee following House Bill 2017. So that's my thinking around that whole strategic area. We talked about public safety as a major area, and what you heard in February was Commissioner Willie interest in continuing that work, but Commissioner Fye and myself also expressed that we're going to be active attendees there as well. Then for economic development, this is the collection as we've been experiencing it. Certainly we have a new staff leadership coming March 8th. I realize Matt Craigy's not here yet, but certainly John Southgate has done a great job on contract. So the Economic Development Work Group, Commissioners Willie and Treese have been spearheading this since we spun it up in May of last year, sticking with that. The Work Systems Inc. Board of Directors, Commissioner Rogers has been on that for about 5-7 years thus far as our liaison. Then Greater Portland Inc. In its evolution, Commissioner Willie has handled that. I've been, as chair, the board liaison to the WEA Board of Directors. Not that this nomenclature of 2019 dash, I'd like to see it through to 2021, but we'll see what happens. CoalPAC, Commissioner Willie's been on that, as well. And that's in the item that's in our packet. That's more geographic based as well. Equity is another major thrust here for the board. From the February meeting, 3 of us really spoke about active commitment there. The Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, we've not yet decided on a board liaison for that. The Equity Advisory Committee, that's the internal one, and the CAO has made her selection of Commissioner Fye, so that's going. Then there are the various community service provider board of directors where we make key contributions from our budget, and we have board representation. So this is the summary of all of that. And for the Washington County Visitors Association, I'm just letting you know, you've already heard this from me before. I'd like to see that through at least to the end of this year to complete the WCVA CEO hiring and 6-month transition. That particular one is a board assignment that is fun. So while I certainly enjoy it, it's a position where it doesn't need to be the chair. So I'm just letting you know that that's something that you might want to think about for next year as well. So that is the information from me, my perspectives in why I looked at a strategic approach to our assignments and look across our full commission set. I'm interested, certainly very interested in your comments, your feedback, and if you have other strategic approaches to propose as well.
I did not see MPAC on this list.
Yeah, this
I
is
think-
not the laundry list. The laundry list is the other one.
Okay. I would just consider MPAC might fit under economic development with the work with the connection to the SEDS and that type of thing. It's wider than that, I recognize.
Right, which is why I didn't put it in here, because it really, you know, MPAC's key mission is to advise the Metro Council on land use, but the Metro Council has a history of asking MPAC for input across the spectrum of Metro Council's portfolio. So I just said, you know, it's a little too complicated.
That's fine.
So
I
it's
can
in that,
understand that.
it's in that
I
main
didn't lose
master.
it. I just didn't want to lose it there.
It's not lost.
Yeah, I think, Pam, along that line, my forestry responsibilities on 2 other committees aren't on here as well, and I don't know where they would fit, but I get that. So this is not intended to be an overall
Right.
recap. It's just these specific things that
Yep.
the chair has categorized, and I'm okay with that. I just need to keep in mind that there's a page 2 to this, just like all the rest of you.
There's a part 2. Yes.
Yeah.
This is just looking at key strategic areas where I think we need to have a lot of visibility as an entire commission. And then the other tool provides the full suite of all the assignments. So this is not a replacement for that at all.
Yeah.
So we can certainly switch over and review that too, so that we have the full set, because we need to come to closure on the full set.
Well, I guess I'd like to comment just on probably the biggest changes in the transportation arena. I have communicated in our previous meeting that that I would like to give Commissioner Faya a little bit of time to get her feet underneath her. And I don't think it's appropriate that we appoint her to JPAC, WCCC, and Region 1 Act. Those are areas that, as you pointed out, I've got a considerable amount of experience in the transportation arena, and certainly have been working in that for the years of mayor and certainly recently, and being a part of the Northwest Act. There's a lot of depth, educational depth in there, and I would much prefer that we ask Nafisa to be the alternate on these, and with the intention that in a year from now, she would have a year of attending these meetings, know the players, and know the details of all this much better. I especially, honestly, having attended the WCCC for all those years as mayor, that's a group of, quite frankly, where relationships help a lot in making those decisions. And the Region 1 Act, I have never attended one of those, but I'd have to believe that we need to have a representative there that understands the full complement of a regional transportation package. And so I'm advocating that we put Nafisa as an alternate in all of those, and we put Roy back in there because he's got the least amount of responsibilities on this so far, and he has the most expertise in this. I feel like if we accelerate these responsibilities too quickly to a new person, it's the old saying of we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and we lose a lot of institutional experience and expertise when we do that. And I'm not willing to put Nafisa into that situation where, to me, it would be a very, very challenging year for her to feel like she's, I guess, participating at the same level as everyone else is, because just of the experience that she needs to gain. So I think that's probably my biggest issues right now, and I really can't support this committee assignment under the transportation the way it is.
Well, I respect that perspective. Thank you for sharing it. As we have seen from other governing bodies, putting the new members of those bodies into these positions is a proven practice. It can be done, it has been done, and it will continue to be done. Having years of experience is not a predictor of success. How we apply that experience, how we engage, particularly with the fact that we have new relationships, new players, and new decision-making criteria across the region, is very clear and very apparent. So I think it's worth our serious consideration to take advantage of the opportunity of Commissioner Fai's experience, involvement, the level of respect that she has with folks across the region, all up and down the relationship metrics here in our area. So that's, just my thinking about that. I don't believe that tenure, years of experience, as you put it, is the requirement for this. It certainly wasn't as we spread assignments around when the three of us were new last year, and we've not been hurt in any way, shape, or form by that.
I don't disagree with that in all the other categories. I mean, I remember when I went on the Public Safety Coordinating Council, and I had no idea what they did. The best part was that they allowed me to hold down the chair and listen for a year to, I guess, get my feet underneath me and understand what it is, the purpose is. And I think that went along with, for all my other assignments, COPAC, Northwest Act, and certainly the forestry councils. Transportation, though, is a different animal in that regards, because there are a number of nuances that you just have to know about what is allowed, what is not allowed, where the needs are, and how we go about negotiating, getting things done on a regional basis. And you're in making this assignment. Roy is the chair of WCCC. That would go away, and evidently they would have to elect a new WCCC chair. Region 1 Act is also a very complex and large area to be putting someone into that position. I mean, you're not even sliding Roy into the alternate position for the ability for him to, he can attend those meetings because they're public meetings, but still with an official designation. So again, there's two parts to this from my standpoint. One is the educational expertise that we lose, and the secondly is I'm concerned about Nafisa, her time capacity, and we're setting her up for a very challenging year, and I'm just concerned about that.
Well, thank you for your remarks. I appreciate that. Certainly, you're being new as a commissioner and new to the public safety sector, and not only, well, for that whole sector and to the community, certainly didn't harm the passage of the public safety levy in May just of last year. So to think that years of success or years of tenure are required for funding success, it just goes to show. We've had new members for these committees. We have great staffing from our Washington County staff. And I know from my years of service at the Metro Council that things really aren't as complicated or nuanced as elected officials here tend to project frankly, in maintaining the status quo of long tenured. It's why we see particularly evidenced this year, though I've seen it my whole tenure on the Metro Council. We have seen new elected faces at JPEC. We've seen new elected faces at the Region 1 Act. So to just say that we have to keep the same person in these committees for that whole long tenure, I don't think is serving our overall Washington County community as well as it could. Now, you've asked Commissioner Fye, is she ready to dedicate her time? And I think we need to let her share and remind us what she said and shared with us in our February roundtable about her commitment to serve as a commissioner. But rather than my paraphrasing that, I'd like us to hear from her. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Chair. And I certainly hear you, Jerry. And I think I'm ready. If you're concerned about my capacity or the level of expertise and the relationship that I will bring, I want you to feel confident that I will carry and I will be impactful for Washington County and really represent us and be a voice that makes a change. Now, the other thing, you mentioned change. Transportation issues keep persisting. and having the same eyes, it really serves us to provide space for new eyes and new voices. And, the voters aren't looking for permission anymore. They voted me. I'm a refugee from Somalia, and I am now an elected official. That really is a testament to what the voters want and why they voted for me. They also knew that I wasn't, an elected official, and I wasn't bringing an experience from a mayoral position or previous as a commissioner. They knew I was going to be a new voice, and they voted for me overwhelmingly because, not to keep the seat warm, but to be impactful for them. And that's what they're really looking for. And if you're concerned about relationships and keeping, I want to remind you the magnitude of the campaign that I run. A lot of the people that I met and got their support and their hard-earned money were people that I was meeting for the first time, but I was able to demonstrate, the stuff on my resume, which were very hard-earned and hard work, truly pulling myself up by my bootstraps, the American dream demonstration of that. And people, appreciated that and said, and gave me the chance to really be a voice for so many people who've been left behind, so many people who felt not heard. I have people, reaching out and demanding that they meet with me, and I'm making space, and they're thankful. And I have constituents who cry because they're like, I didn't think I will be able to meet with you this quickly. I've only been here 2 months. So I think it's important that we provide space for new folks and really challenge our own unbiased consciousness that's coming up for us. I will definitely not going to be bringing, the 36 years of experience our Commissioner Roger has, but I look to him as a mentor, and I will certainly reach back and not discredit all those experience and get his inputs and get his take on and brainstorm. But I like to be given a chance to really represent us and look at the suggestions of the committees. If I don't have, if we don't go with the committees that's in front of us, how we're really being equitable and how we're really making space for new, not continuing the status quo. I won't have any other committees unless the Equity Council that our CEO requested that I sit on, Tanya. So I really want to challenge you. I know it's hard to do new things, and change is always hard. But I want to assure you that I definitely have the knowledge and the experience and the relationship to really center Washington County and give us a really a different way of doing, business as usual, different ways of really looking transportation and different ways of centering new voices, people who've been left behind of the political debates and conversations. So I'll work hard, and it's a new road. It's and I guarantee you, I've been attending for the last couple months as a listening member of that JPAC committee, the transportations, as well as other committees. I've called in to listen, and most of the people are new folks. So it's not, I'm not going into established committee. Everybody was going through the same thing when I joined this board. Oh, can we not use acronyms? Can we give me the history? I need a briefing on that subject because when you guys talked about, I wasn't here. So people are saying that. So it's not a new or established committee. And I'll definitely pull my own weight and certainly keep up the pace. And just to close to say, I like to be that representative for Washington County.
I'd like to add a few comments as well. One, Commissioner Rowley, thank you for your comments. I have a totally different perspective than I'm hearing today. And that perspective is there are committees that you do need a bit of knowledge. You do need a bit of background. You do need a bit of perspective, and you do need the relationships. I appreciate hearing the story again and again about I'm new and I got this fresh perspective. I'm deeply offended, and I will be offended until the day I leave this commission if I keep hearing that somebody's unbiased, that more equity, that can't do the status quo. That implies the same sort of rhetoric I'm hearing that somehow we are, or I am. I'm quite uncomfortable with what the chair has done in terms of predicting committees. That's not leadership. That's entirely dictatorship. I'm not happy with that. I feel uncomfortable with a number of things that have occurred. I've felt discriminatory actions against my age and against my gender. And I can tell you that's not comfortable. I keep hearing that. Do we need to transition? Of course. You have a plan. Every business has a plan. You don't do it overnight. As far as expertise and knowledge, you do need it. It's just the way it is. So you certainly can remove me. That's your prerogative. That doesn't mean that I'm comfortable with the language I've been hearing. I'm not comfortable with what I perceive to be hostile. It's not comfortable with what I hear as a atmosphere of some prejudice, frankly. And with that, I'll leave it. But this is not something that I think that experienced leaders make a decision. I'll make one other comment. The people that are being put on these committees are not inexperienced. You've named people that are new. They're not inexperienced. They are not. You will lose the Region 1 Act chair. If that's what you want to do, you certainly can do it. But that's a big loss, I can tell you right now. So I've said what I want to say. I'm deeply offended by the comments that have been made, and I will articulate that in the community.
Well, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt and that you're offended, Commissioner Rogers. You certainly have every right to your feelings. This is a proposal. You use the word dictatorship. It's a proposal, and it's a proposal worthy of discussion. I certainly believe in putting values into action. This board has established values through our equity resolution. I stand by the conviction of those values and ensuring that we are equitable across our own board and our board assignments. We know from the way the transportation decision-making structure has occurred over the last 10 years has evolved and changed. And I think now is a very important time for us to evolve and change our simple Washington County Board representation in the transportation space. You certainly have the opportunity to speak your voice, to stretch your interest areas to other areas than transportation. But to claim that this area is yours and yours alone is not fair. And I am ensuring that we discuss and make room across the full board, across all of the strategic areas as I've seen it. I have welcomed other strategic approaches. Once again, I appreciate that your feelings are what they are. I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt, but I stand by ensuring that we as a board are effective in this space. And I believe now is the time for us to put our values into action and provide for this new leadership, which I think exemplifies how there are new voices through transportation planning, as reflected by the extent of the project proposals that we saw through the Get Moving 2020 forum as well, and the voices that are being expressed around major projects here in Washington County. So Once again, I'm sorry for your feelings.
It's not only my feelings for Washington County. You've been chair on this board for 2 years, and I have seen a lot of issues, not only with this board, but within the staff as well. I can't remain silent anymore. I'm going to start speaking up on every occasion, on every issue, and bring that out because I think it's important. And Nafisa, I just want you to know, nothing against you. I think I was on this board 3 years before I kind of got the flow and the rhythm. You have a very different opinion of your skill sets. So that's fine. But you do need to understand there's a lot of complexities. Trying to understand that, yeah, I think I'm an expert on all these things. That's not going to happen overnight. And so I think what Jerry was saying about a glide path is a business approach, but I certainly understand that's not the approach that this particular chair and this board wants to take. So I will get off the line.
As you well know, Commissioner Rogers, the voters don't elect us to sit in our chairs and just watch for some number of years. They expect us to do the work from day one and hit the ground running. Yes, I am proud that I was elected as chair. There are a lot of changes that we have made that have been needed for quite some time. I don't regret that we've been improving things here in Washington County, and we will continue to. And we'll continue to do that open and transparently and following Oregon's public meeting laws such that we are having these conversations together as a group as we deliberate towards decisions. I know it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. Our community has changed over the years. It's one of the main reasons why we need to go through the Washington County Strategic Plan to modernize things as we find ourselves here in the 2020s. Thank you. Commissioner Treese.
I'd like to make a few comments here. If I think about what's best for Washington County, and if I reflect from that perspective, first of all, I want to say the trouble that we're having is almost an embarrassment of riches from the standpoint of interest in participation. We've got people who want to be engaged. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I think that one of the problems that we have in the realm of transportation, I've spent some time this last couple of weeks understanding what the relationships are between the different assignments, understanding what the processes are behind those assignments. And I think that we need to reflect as a commission, aside from these particular assignments, personnel assignments, why are we so tied in transportation? Why are all of our, why are our boards and commissions tied together? For example, our WCCC assignment is tied to the JPAC assignment by the bylaws for WCCC. That limits the number of exposures that we can have as commissioners and development opportunities that we can have for commissioners. That concerns me. The R1 Act, as you all know, I sit on the Act in a different capacity. My understanding is that those are appointments that are made for 4 years. So I don't know if the board has the authorization to change that appointment. And I raised that question. I'm also aware that the chair is, as by the JPAC bylaws, it's the chair's responsibility to make that assignment. So that's how I understand this. And I think that as an organization, transportation, as Commissioner Willie pointed out, is a very large and important issue to us. I think we need to be thoughtful about how we engage at a regional level and at the Washington County level in all aspects of transportation, so that when we have these assignments, it isn't just one person that has the responsibility. I also think that we have done a poor job, and with all due respect, Roy, this is about succession planning and development of others as we come along the way. So my preference would be almost a co-chair type of, or co-seating type of arrangement where Nafisa would have the opportunity to learn with dual responsibility. I know that it doesn't fit the model, but my goal would be to bring Nafisa's interest and her future interest in transportation and meld it with the wealth of information and knowledge that we have in Commissioner Rogers. So, and I don't know if that's a possibility, but I would, while I respect and admire Nafisa's interest in being engaged in doing all this, I also don't, I want to make sure that the best outcome comes forward for Washington County as a whole, not for one district or another district, but all of us sit on these committees for Washington County as a whole. And that's the responsibility that I see.
Well, as you mentioned, Commissioner Treese, we don't have the opportunity of that dualism. And it makes sense to link the JPACT position with the WCCC chair position, or the board's designee to WCCC. So there is that, which is why I made this proposal. You know, we've all had the opportunity to see how the leadership and community was engaged through the Get Moving measure. We've seen it similarly across other major funding programs. And frankly, I think we need to ensure that we're making changes. You mentioned that we've done a poor job with regard to succession planning. It's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have good engagement across us as a board in communicating with what's happening on these different committees. I think starting as a new board in 2019, we've done an increasingly better job at that. And we need to continue that moving forward. So I don't know if there's anything, Commissioner Fye, if you have any thoughts in terms of what you've heard from Commissioner Treese or Commissioner Willie or Commissioner Rogers. I've heard your comments. I myself still believe that we should make some changes in these transportation assignments in that whole strategic area, and have Commissioner Fye be our representative both at JPACT and at WCCC.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate, with all due respect, I've been a member of this community for a long time now and have tremendous relationships with leaders around our region. And I just want to quickly remind everybody that I'm an equal member of this publicly elected body. I am more than equipped and willing to dedicate my time on this issue. I just wanted to say, you won't be disappointed representing Washington County on that board.
Procedurally, I know this is coming to the board, and you've removed it from consent, which is a good idea. So, and again, I heard Pam say that the Region 1 ACT position was appointed. So there's certainly needs to be some clarification there as to,
Mhm.
you know, Roy's going to be in that position for a while. So procedurally, we're just going to bring this up and vote on this in
No,
next
I
week
think
or whenever that is.
we do have an adoption of our roster. As mentioned earlier, we have a full slate of committee assignments to review in this meeting today. What we've been discussing was just my proposal for a strategic approach. So I think we still need to spend time here looking at that full slate from the package and make sure that that is what we want to advance and move forward with.
So if we were to adopt this or whatever the final results of this are they effective July 1 or immediately or what?
Oh, they'd be effective in the, immediately in terms of the future month. And to the Region 1 Act, it's not, the assignments also follow the, with the exception of who is the chair of the Region 1 Act, as elected body membership changes, so too does the representation, such as on the Region 1 Act, as there have been new Metro councilors, new council president, new county commissioners. Those assignments evolve and change as well. But we can certainly follow up on that and make sure that we're in line with what the bylaws are for the Region 1 Act. So we have time for that. But right now we do have it slated for action on our March 16th agenda to make sure that we're able to take the results of our conversation today, get that reflected in the packet, published, and action by the board. But we do need to get going and finalize our slate of committee assignments. Yeah.
Well, I agree with that, but again, in the committees that is a new person that's assigned to it, again, there needs to be a transition. It can't be like, well, I went to the meeting in February, but now I am no longer assigned in March, so I'm out.
It's
So
happened before. There's precedent here. The world is not going
understand
to
that.
end. There are no actions.
You're
in
making too
play.
light, Chair. You're making too light of the transportation responsibilities. I'm sorry. It's not like the PSCC or it's not like my Northwest Act or any of the other things. It's not the same. Okay. There's decisions and planning that have been made that need to be continued, and there needs to be a transition.
I hear what you're saying. I do take a different view because as a Metro councilor, we had changes at the JPAC table. I've seen it work time and time again. I've seen the changes with new mayors from many different cities. I've seen it does work. Transportation is not some monolith that cannot be learned and done. I'm
going to disagree with you.
I know,
Roy
that's
is
fine.
chair. Roy is chair of the WCCC. He's chair of Region 1 Act. You don't take a person out of the lead position and remove them in a day. Okay, you just don't do that. You have a transition plan, just exactly like what we're talking about here is a succession plan. We do the same thing. We just don't turn about face on a dime and expect there not to be some bumps along the way. And again, it's our responsibility to make sure the transition is smooth. Yes, it's our responsibility to also hear new voices and put people into new places. It is our responsibility, and we are doing that. But it doesn't mean we have them step off into the deep end immediately and we reject the person that's been in that position for a long time. Okay. We just can't do that. You talk about the voters expect us to do these things. The voters also expect us to be prudent and logical about how we make these transitions. Okay. That's what I'm advocating.
I think, so to take your words, the expectation of logic, my approach is based on logic. It's just not accepting that a change is catastrophic. It is not a rejection. It is an enabling of new leadership, of new reflection of our community. So I'll leave it at that. I don't have a problem at all that you and I have a different lens and a different opinion on this. I get it. If you're uncomfortable about the fact that you won't be at that March 16th meeting, we can certainly delay the adoption to April 6th when you are back. That's not a problem either.
Well, I guess that would be my preference, but I don't, I could always connect up through Zoom. I will have Zoom capabilities as I will be in on our meeting for the Monday agenda as well. So I'm okay either way in that. And I guess I want to go back to my procedural question. If I make changes to this and it's my recommendation, how does that work? Are we going to have to bring it's kind of like I make a motion to amend this and make these changes. And so is that how we do this thing? Is that how we vote on it? Is that what it's coming down to? Or is there still negotiation in this? I'm not hearing there's much negotiation on your part.
Commissioner Willie, I've put the approach forward. We have 5 different commissioners. I've heard you and Commissioner Rogers say that you would like to see Commissioner Rogers remain in this position. Commissioner Fye is ready. I'm ready to support her in this. I'm not quite sure where Commissioner Treese is on this. It's still open for discussion. And with every piece of legislation, the legislation is open for change right up until the point of voting. So this is no different than anything else. Commissioner Treese, where do you stand? What would you like?
First of all, I've made it clear that I respect a transition, and Nafisa's interest is admirable, and I'd like to see her engaged. But at the same time, I think that it needs to be a transition that benefits the whole county by making sure that we're engaging Commissioner Rogers as well. And I don't know how to do that, frankly. But well, you can raise your eyebrows, but I don't know how to make sure that there is the transition of knowledge. The other thing that I'm going to say is that my understanding after reading the bylaws is that it is the chair's decision. So so that leaves me with some confusion as to what the vote would be about. And I just want to clarify that as well. And if you're asking for a vote of support for your position, that's different. So I'm just trying to understand how this transpires. I agree 100% that we need new voices, and we need to have our community be represented in an ongoing manner. And I would say that frankly, if Nafisa were to be the appointee, that it shouldn't be the same after 3 or 4 years. It should be, we should establish a rolling approach here that ensures that Washington County's needs are met. So this is not about individuals to me. This is about changing how we approach all of our regional experiences. So, if, God forbid, if Commissioner Rogers were hit by a bus, what would we do? That's the way I approach this. Which is a philosophy, and also I don't know if we would have necessarily a policy in relationship to this, but I think that we're breaking with tradition. We're breaking with the way that this has gone on in the past. We have communities that need to be represented that are obviously clamoring to be represented and don't feel that they're represented. That's important. But I need to feel comfortable about, are we meeting the needs of Washington County, and how will, to Commissioner Willie's point, how will that transition occur? And what worries me, and I'll be very honest about this, what worries me is I don't see a good line of communication that this process and the way we've approached this does not bode well for good communication or set a stage for good communication between Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Fye. And I think we need to make sure that we are allowing them opportunities to come together and to communicate more effectively. So I'm just laying that out there. We haven't heard again from Commissioner Rogers, but his position was pretty impassioned, as well as Nafisa's, and Nafisa's position about representing the community that hasn't had a perception of voices is very, very important.
I agree with you, Commissioner Treese. Thank you for sharing your comments. Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Fye, they don't need our permission to communicate. It's what is incumbent. That's not, I understand your point, but they don't need our permission to do that. I sit here knowing that Commissioner Rogers, as the JPAC representative, as the WCCC representative for Washington County, has not yet called and made contact with new mayors here in Washington County. And I raise this as a specific example because it goes to part of what is missing for our board representation here in Washington County from the board, and that is communication. I appreciate that through our example of talking about what is happening at committees, that Commissioner Rogers has as well started sharing more information with us, his colleagues, about what's been happening on the committee areas that he has served these last 2 years. I have not put this proposal forward in a light fashion. Just as you, Commissioner Treese, and our 3 other colleagues have shared their thoughts with passion. With regard to our own communication and conversations about the full slate, we've done that as a group, as we are guided by Oregon law to do and have these discussions in public. If there is some other approach that you would have preferred, we've each had the full opportunity to bring that forward. I do know and respect that you're all challenged, as these are part-time positions. And I appreciate that you provide your time, not only in our Tuesday meetings, but this once a month roundtable. Yes, change is hard. I have thought long and hard about what the various aspects of the strategic approach involve. I appreciate your comments here. We need to move forward on our assignments and solidifying them. We are a new board. When we have new members join, which is why we've been thoughtful in going over the full set, in hearing one another's comments in our roundtable conversations thus far this year. So with regard to what it means to transition, that's up to us and up to the folks who are the representatives for us. We're all professionals. I think we're a good board in respecting one another. And I believe that we can make this transition successful in whatever way, shape, or form the transition is for all these different assignments, transportation included. So
I take an exception to the comment that I haven't reached out to new mayor. In my last campaign, I had every mayor endorse my campaign, everyone. And the only one I have not talked to this particular time is the mayor of Beaverton. I had Denise support in the last one. Mayor of Beaverton, because she has decided that she is not representing her city, she sent a council member. So I'm not sure where you get your information, but I talk with the mayors on a regular basis. This is not the case. I like, and I'm going to finish off by saying Commissioner Treese's point is well taken. Every business has a transition plan. We failed and we didn't have one. And I think that we do need one. I don't disagree. But the transition doesn't say that, gee, one person leaves one day, another one comes another day. I'm perfectly happy if this board wants to have me change, that's fine. I will notify those particular groups. I no longer represent this county in those matters. But I'll also represent to the mayors my positions on other things. So anyway, it's a very disappointing conversation. It could have been handled much, much better.
Okay, I have two requests. One is that we do move this decision to April 6th. And the other is that there be a clarification of understanding. It was my understanding that the board chair has the authority to appoint JPAC. Everything else is by vote of the commissioners. I'm certainly not inclined to do this on a line-by-line basis, but yeah. So anyway, I would like confirmation of those two questions, and then request to be moved to April 6th. And I will be working on making sure that my position and recommendation is both supportive of Nafisa's desire to be this, but in a much more clearly and orderly transition time.
So we have the full slate totally open here for discussion today. If you'd like to see specific changes to that slate, please make a recommendation and bring it forward. And, you know, I think it's time for us to transition to the document that is in the packet that is the full slate, and to go over that. That's why we have it to go over today, is to have a full proposed slate with board direction today so that we can do the work to adopt and make transitions.
Well, I can certainly tell you what my recommendation is going to be if you want me to do it formally now in this meeting, or if you want me to put it in writing to you, or
no.
how
So
would you
if
like
we
me to
could,
proceed?
Clerk Moss, could we please go over the full slate for all the assignments?
I don't think that I don't have any problem with any of the assignments except in the transportation arena.
Okay.
All the rest of them are just fine. I think it's good logic. We've kind of processed through that. I haven't heard from Commissioner Teresa Rogers about, or Nafisa about their about their assignments in the other areas being problematic, or I mean, you know, if they want one of my assignments, then let's talk about that. I haven't heard any of that. It's been all focused on transportation. So that's where I thought we were.
So what I heard from Commissioner Treese is that she is open to new assignments for transportation, but wants to ensure that we have a transition. If we're going to put a change forward on the board liaison to WCCC, that we have a smooth transition on that assignment. But I did not hear her say that she's against having Commissioner Fye serve as the new chair, as the new board commission representative to WCCC. So that's my understanding. If I'm incorrect in understanding that three of us are comfortable with that at this time, I'm all ears.
I'd like to hear Jerry's proposal, Commissioner Willie's proposal, and I'd also like to support his recommendation to move to April 6th. And I suspect that in discussing this, both Commissioner Fye and Commissioner Rogers, we are going to hear from community members about this. So I think that we need to be prepared for that as well. So I'm just raising that issue, and that's our job, and there's the community. The community should tell us what they want. That's what we're here to do.
I also have I think I have another clarification question. Is there connectivity between our JPAC representative also being the WCCC representative and the Region 1 Act? So are those three tied together by charter or whatever, or do we have the ability to divvy up? Okay, if that's then, I'll be candid about what my recommendations are going to be. I'm okay with Nafisa representing us on JPAC and Catherine being the alternate. On WCCC, I think Roy should be the lead and Nafisa being the alternate, and we can put a date of transition there, 6 months from now. So we don't have to go to July 1, we don't have to go to December 31. We can say in 6 months, Nafisa will transition. I'm going to do the same thing on the Region 1 Act, only I'm probably going to put that a little bit longer out. Roy being the lead, Nafisa being our alternate, and the transition there would be 1/1/22.
Thank you.
I think we do need to clarify the connection points to make sure that we can do what that proposal is.
So we have full control over our WCCC board liaison assignment, right? WCCC is advisory to us, and we have full control over that transition time as Commissioner Rogers is defined, or as Commissioner Willie has proposed. That is not the mayors do not, or the city representatives, whether they're mayors or council presidents or councilors, as has occurred over the years, going back to Tualatin pretty recently. They do not decide who the board representative is. We decide that. with regard to the Region 1 Act, I'm not 100% sure on that either, but I think Commissioner Willie's proposal is a useful approach and addresses concerns that I've heard here about transition. So I appreciate that proposal. Thank you, Commissioner Willie.
The
Does
only
anyone have?
Yeah, the only comment I'd make, Jerry, I probably wouldn't support that, because if you want to do it, there's too many cycles in this MTIP cycle, STIP cycle. That's if you want a 6-month cycle out, just do it now and be done with it. Don't bother about the transition, because the transition's taking longer than what your time period. That's on WCCC as well. So if you want to,
I get that, Roy, but in regards to the other members of these committees, commissions, I think we need to also give them opportunity for us making this transition. So it isn't a flip the switch. So no, I'm going to stick with my 6-month rollout on the WCCC and the 1 year on the Region 1 Act.
thank you. I probably will resign based on that from those committees. So thank you. I think we may solve this real quick.
Okay. All righty, folks, looking at time, would you like to move forward with the current slate, or were there, I have to look back at that to see if there were any questions embedded there. No, I don't see any question marks in there. So we have that slate.
Ask for clarification again. I'm sorry to be so dense about this, but is the slate just these, according to these strategic areas? It's the entire package. Okay.
So that strategic approach modified by what Commissioner Willie has suggested, and then so take pages 29, 30, and 31 and update it from the strategic approach and Commissioner Willie's proposal from today. And we can follow up, put that in writing, and get that sent out. Well, certainly it would be part of the packet for the April 6th meeting, but we can get that whole list updated, swiftly over the last week and get that sent out. I saw you give a thumbs up, so I think your question is answered. Okay, all righty. Well, I think that's it for this topic. Any last questions or comments? Okay. I have to pull out the agenda myself.
Chair, while you're doing that, just to remind you, I need to leave in about 6 minutes for my vaccination. And so I will be rejoining you, I believe, at 1 o'clock. Is that all right? All right, thank you.
Yep. Good luck with the vaccination. All righty, so we'll move on to our second topic then, and that is reviewing with the County Council the board rules and procedures.
All right, thank you. Hey, Kevin, could you pull that up onto the share screen?
Yes, I can, Alan. Give me 1 second.
All right, thank you.
You also did a nice job of ensuring in the packet that we have both the clean current version and a comment annotated version from you as well. So I would just point that out to my colleagues.
And I want to give credit to Kevin because he made some really good comments on there too that I incorporated in the presentation. So Okay, so this is, just a review for all of you, a couple suggestions, a little refresher for Commissioner Fye. I've been over this with her briefly before, but I'll talk about it here. Again, I want to talk about this Section 2 presiding officer. We had a little conversation about that. What is the powers of the presiding officer? And they, basically, as you know, presided with the meetings. And although one thing I wanted to point out in that is Section E, that all decisions of the presiding officer shall be subject to review by the majority of the board. So if you guys have some concerns about procedure or process, you guys always get to vote on it. And so on Section G there, Kevin, if you could highlight that comment. Thank you. Let's see, I still can't see it.
Let's see if I can pull it over.
Okay, thank you. I have it in my other screen. I can get at.
It's over in the right hand. It's the top one, Alan. That's why
Okay.
it's gray.
Yeah, so it was under my picture of all you guys. So this was Kevin's suggestion that we amend this to add digitized signatures allowed on your recent minute order 2111. So so let's go down. We have Section 3, Clerk of the Board. You all know Kevin and his responsibilities. Yes, Madam Chair.
I do have a question on item A. Just to make sure we're all understanding the same thing. So this verbatim record does not mean that we have verbatim text recording of the meeting, but rather that there is, we have the digital video, we have the digital audio, we have written summary minutes. So I just want to have you clarify a written summary of the proceedings rather than a.
Yes.
Oh,
so yeah, the public records, public meetings laws require you have minutes, and that's basically right out of the public meetings laws. You don't need a verbatim record. You can have a summary of what went on.
So here's the problem. I thought your comments highlighted the changes, but what I'm seeing, Section A that we're seeing on the screen is different than what the current Section A reads in our adopted board's
I'll have to
rules
take
and
a look at that.
procedure. So, so I see now that it's an improved wording. So
I'll have to double check that. Maybe there was, because I pulled this copy off the website that had the board proceedings. So I'll have to double check that. And if there is a change, and if it makes better sense to do it this way, we'll do it this way.
well, here's my. Oh no, I was looking at the wrong sentence, Alan.
Oh, okay.
My question is, and shall be present at each meeting of the board and shall provide for a verbatim record of the proceedings and a written summary of actions. Yes. A written summary of the proceedings rather than a verbatim record shall be sufficient in the case of executive sessions. So here's my question. We don't have verbatim written summaries anymore, okay? We do have the audio recordings and the video of meetings. But it's my understanding that the audio files are only kept for 2 years.
Right.
So that's the verbatim record of the whole meeting. And so that second sentence only applies to executive sessions, emergency meetings, retreats, or other meetings. So that makes sense to me, but the first sentence doesn't seem to hold for our current practices.
The shall be present, okay, and shall provide a verbatim record of the proceedings, which we do, and a written summary of the action. That's what the written minutes are.
So Alan, can you remind me, what is our verbatim record of the proceedings?
That would be the recordings.
Okay. And we're okay that those recordings are only kept for 2 years.
Right, that comports with the archival rules.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and so we keep the written
Thank
summary
you.
forever until the end of time.
Got it. Okay, I'm with you. Now I understand. It was because of this question of the transition. We transitioned in 2019 from these verbatim minutes to the summary minutes. So now I'm following. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and section B there, we this is sort of kind of archaic language. Shall maintain a journal of board proceedings and shall be available for reasonable time. And the suggestion was keep the completed board packets to add that. And so that sort of covers the whole gamut of things. A journal proceeding seems like an agenda to me, but we'll just do a belt and suspenders with adding the board packets there.
Yes, and Alan, if I may, this is Kevin, this is Chair Harrington, what is sent to all the liaisons, and the new system will have the complete of all signed items that the board approves.
Yeah, I think this improvement of having board packets included there is really a reflection of modern packets. Only having agendas available really isn't a reflection of the modern day open public meetings laws and proceedings. So I really appreciate the advancement of that area.
Okay, we can make that change. So the next section is the regular meetings. What I wanted to point out in here is basically this subsection F. If you go up to that bit, Kevin. So it says each day of the work week other than Tuesdays at 10 to 2 can be a regular meeting. This was written back to be as broad, as inclusive to cover meetings under the charter. And so if you have to have a meeting on a Wednesday, you can. There's specific notice proceedings about 20 days. And I've always recommended the board go ahead, if they're going to make a change to a regular meeting, they know about it, go ahead and put it 20 days ahead, just to sort of, again, the belt and suspenders approach, more public notice is better. So in section B in work sessions, I have a comment down there. So I was suggesting, so it says that hold a work session on the first and third Tuesdays of each month at 8:30 and the second and fourth Tuesdays at 2 p.m. I was going to suggest that we change that to comport with our current schedule and change it to every Tuesday except the fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's much clearer. Thank you.
That sounds good. And let's go down a page, Kevin, please. So we talk about special meetings that we do, and that's where we can do it in 72 hours notice. That'd be, so that would be outside of that time frame I talked about in subsection F. But again, I always recommend at least the 72 hours notice, and preferable to do ahead of time through the 20-day charter change. And again, we talk again about notice and agenda, section 5. Section 6 is compulsory attendance. We can send the sheriff out to drag you into the board meetings. Hopefully that won't ever have to happen. Let's see. Section 8, motions and resolutions and orders. I think you're pretty familiar with that. A motion, a second. Unlike some cities, the chair here can make motions and second things. And so she has a broader authority than like mayors and city councils. You're familiar with that.
Alan?
Yes.
What do we have to do so that it's just standard that we read ordinances by title only unless a board member makes a motion to read the whole thing? Because that's certainly allowed. Can we do it here, or do we have to add it to that laundry list of charter changes.
I'll tell you what, let me take a look at that and see. I don't think that's required because the charter says that you read the ordinance in whole unless you make a motion to read by title only, and if it doesn't pass, it's not unanimous. So there's only 4 votes for it. Then we have to read the title by title and whole. So there are some specific language in that, and let me look for a solution to that. That would be nice to shave a few minutes off every meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Let's see now, communications from the public. Kevin, you could go down one more page, please. So the one suggestion I have here so we talk about groups, and that's been a problem from day one in every single jurisdiction I worked at. People come in and say, I represent the mailbox owners of 37th Street. And so you can either further define exactly what a group is. You want to say it's a CCI or a CPO. And one of my suggestions is potentially just get rid of that whole group thing, and just because it never, at least my experience. So one person says, I'm representing this neighborhood association, and I'm here to talk for 12 minutes. And then you get the 12 minutes, and then the 37 other people in that same neighborhood get their 3 minutes. And the idea was that you have a group, and they speak for them, and the other people just raise their hands. And so, I could spell, depending on the will of the board, I could spell that out, give more detail to that, define what the group is, or and make people limit their, basically, acknowledge that they're giving up their time for this other person. And but again, it's really hard to cut people off.
So I'll say, based upon my 12 years of serving on the Metro Council, we did not have these group provisions. If it seemed like we had a lot of people in the room, if there were folks that wanted to amplify what someone was saying as they were asserting they were representing a group, then people would just use silent hands or stand up or something that was a quiet provision. It didn't need to be through the rules of procedure as adopted or through charter or code. Just, common sense in conducting public meetings. So I think it's reasonable, very reasonable, to remove this individual versus group provision. People always have the right of offering their testimony, and so I think your changes are appropriate, and I'd like to see us make those changes.
Any other commissioner have concern about that, or I'd be happy to. Okay, that would, I think it'd simplify the meetings and trying to define who's a group. And obviously when someone says I'm the president of the neighborhood association, that will carry some weight. And we talked about it at the last 4 meetings, and this is how we voted. So, and again, the board can always say, well, I'll give you a little bit more time because you have more things to talk about and you're the president. So then we have Section C rules governing communications with the board. I think you're familiar with that, about the time clock.
I have a question on that one, on item 4.
Yes.
Audio visual aids, presentations. I'm wondering if we need to add something to the effect that the clerk of the board reserves the right to deny or limit the use of such presentations unless the presiding officer invites the use of such presentations.
Right, that's the suggestion we made in the little sidebar. And
oh, that's why I wrote it down.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. That was another good comment from Kevin.
Yes.
And so I wanted
couldn't get
to,
it to print the changes for me, so I wrote them down.
oh, good. No, that was
heavens.
perfect. You did my
Yes.
job for me. Uh,
I like that.
So-
Thank you.
And just as a matter of clarification, I looked at that and I said, well, gosh, we're going to deny the people hard of hearing with, listening devices, listening aids. So I'm changing aids to presentation to make it clear that you want to bring in your 87 slide PowerPoint. Kevin can say no, and then the board can always allow it if she thinks it's a fabulous 87 page PowerPoint. So, next on work sessions, you can only get people invited. Again, as you know, for work sessions, you can't take any official actions. Appointments to boards and commissions. The one I made one suggestion down in section 11, section C, that it be unless otherwise specified, because there's some expertise that you may want to have from the region, and I know, I believe there's some commissions where if you reside, work, or have an office in Washington County, you can be appointed to a board.
So I have a question about A. We're a much bigger county than decades ago, and that leads us to being challenged with regard to personal relationships. So we're seeing a lot more assignments being determined by a person's knowledge, skills, passion, diversity, just to name a few factors. And I was thinking about the very first line in subsection A.
Right.
Instead of appointments shall be made so that insofar as possible, membership from each commission or district is represented, to something along the line of, where possible, the commission strives for membership across all commission districts, so that it's a guide as opposed to a rule. Because I think it is a good guide, but we've seen certainly the practice be that a commissioner can appoint someone, but is not required to have that person be from the very same district. Well, actually, over the last 2 years, we've really discussed this over and over and over again, how the Planning Commission is the only one that has a geographic requirement. Boy, I had to remind myself of that, didn't I? Thank you, Commissioner Treese. So it just seemed to me like this is making it sound like such a set rule as opposed to a guide that is reflective of the fact that we have a lot of positions where we're looking for knowledge, skills, passion, and diversity. So it's just an idea. So now is the time to bring ideas forward. So don't know what my colleagues think about that. So to be clear, the phraseology I'm proposing is, where possible, the commission strives for membership across all commission districts.
And then we get rid of the next sentence. Any commissioner may waive as a courtesy his or her right or privilege to nominate.
Good point. Yep, good point.
That makes it more of a, okay. So we can make that change and we'll bring it back to the board and the board can vote on it.
Okay.
And I'll probably talk to Kevin about that specific language since I want to make sure we get it right. Okay, so board vacancies, that's all set up by charter, just repeated here. If we go down, and I think that's, so there's the ordinances, shall be, maybe looking about the first reading there.
Yeah, so this is the place, you're right, for that title, read by title only.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering and certainly with your legal brain and Kevin's board clerk expertise, I was really trying to figure out what change would we need so it can be read by title only. And I don't know if this does it. In subsection B, the second line, at the meeting at which it is introduced, the proposed ordinance shall be read unless at the meeting, and then gets into the land use ordinances.
Right, right. Yeah, well, I'll work on that and try to come up with a workable solution, and we'll bring it back to you.
Great. And then I just have a question on subsection E. C, excuse me.
C.
Yeah. Is now the time to go bring that
Sure,
forward?
sure. That's where right there.
Okay.
I think I'm done with actually all my formal recommendations.
Okay. On subsection C, let's see, what line? 1, 2, 3, the fourth line. So it's on the top of the next page.
Yes.
No ordinance shall be enacted prior to the 14th day after its introduction. My question is that what state law is, or is this a change or?
That's a charter requirement.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure where it comes from.
Yeah, and so when you file an engrossed ordinance, that's considered an introduction of a new ordinance.
Yep. Yeah, great. I really appreciate the process that we have at Metro. For whatever reason, there were a lot of ordinances where there was frequently an emergency clause executed, and it had something to do with getting the changes in and reposting things for 30 days versus it. I think the Washington County method has been nice and clear.
It seems to has been working fine. We just did the emergency ordinance, all one reading, one hearing, one adoption.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
can do that. What this doesn't have a lot in is the weird land use ordinance procedures. But I think your prior boards didn't want to take up a lot of paragraphs explaining all that weird stuff for the land use ordinances. So I think that's fine. We got the land use ordinance drilled down pretty well, I believe, the staff and your councils.
Yep. So I only had one last question.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to present.
No, that was it for me.
My last question is on section 18 with the county auditor.
Mm-hmm.
On subsection D, as in dog. 1, 2, 3. The third line. The auditor shall furnish the board with a written status report on the recommendations in the audit no later than 6 months from the date the board formally receives the audit. Well,
Right.
So I didn't quite follow this. Is this talking about, this isn't the follow-up audits. So what I've seen time and time again is an audit is done and he and his team do the audit. The auditor writes up the report and delivers that to management. Management looks at it, they write a response, and we get that whole thing, that whole package provided to us. And usually we get a presentation from the auditor, within a couple of months of the audit full report and response package being provided to us. So what I don't understand is this whole 6-month business. What is that getting at? I haven't followed.
So I think that's, it has effectively in the past been the follow-up audit. So you do the audit, get the audit report out that has the back and forth between the administration and the auditor. And then the audit is presented to the board as final. And then there's going to be, work stuff that needs to be done. So you'll have to say, the audit recommends doing this, and the county administrator replies, and the auditor says, great, you fixed it. Or the county administrator says, we need to change A, B, and C. And so 6 months later, they'll have the follow-up that says, the auditor finds that worked with the county administrator, they completed A, B, but not C, or they've done everything. And so, it's kind of an ongoing process, not necessarily 6 months. I'll have to look at the charter provisions about that.
So as I understand it, I think we need to ask the auditor about this on the modern day standards, because I tried to paraphrase the whole audit package that we get, and I for follow-up audits, the industry standard and what our auditor has normalized for the board, even the prior board before I was chair, was follow-up audits occur, between a period of 1 to 3 years to see if the recommended actions that the auditor and the CAO, the agency, has committed to. So I don't think this 6-month business is relevant.
So, Madam Chair, we have the county auditor online if you would like to hear from him.
Is it appropriate for us to bring him in and have him help us with this?
It's up to the board.
Board members, are you comfortable with that? Okay. Kevin, if you could bring Auditor Hutzler in, that would be great.
Can you hear us, John?
You're on mute.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Auditor Hutzler.
Thank you.
Sorry if we caught you off guard.
That's all right. I've been watching all along.
Thank you.
So my impression of this provision in your procedures is that it applies only to the circumstances described in Section A, where the board specifically requests an audit. This 6-month follow-up process that's described there would not apply to audits that I've undertaken under my discretion and my audit plan, my
Right.
routine audit plan. I think this whole section applies only when there is a motion made at the board and a specific request from the board for a specific audit that is then referred to the auditor, considered, and undertaken by the auditor.
Okay.
Is that correct, Alan?
Yeah, and I think that's a plausible interpretation. Also, it's only directed to the county administrator and actions that the board directed the county administrator to take.
Right.
So I don't think that's happened too much.
I didn't
I mean,
follow.
it certainly hasn't happened since I've been in office.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't make that connection at all. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing this to life for me. Now I get it.
The process that you've been describing, Chair Harrington, is a function of the audit procedures of my office. This is
Yep.
a whole separate process.
Got it. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay,
so-
so that was it for my questions. I really appreciate.
That
Go
was
ahead,
it for my presentation. And so with those changes, I'll bring it back. I know you have incredibly packed calendars, so we'll try to work with Tanya and get it scheduled. I'm hoping it won't be a significant debate about those issues.
Are commissioners following the proposed changes? And as such, we do have the opportunity for questions at our work sessions the day before a meeting. And so I think it would be a reasonable approach to put it on the consent agenda. But I see, it looks like both Commissioner Fye and Commissioner Rogers have unmuted. I wasn't paying attention to who is first. So go ahead, commissioners.
Commissioner Rogers, do you want to go or should I go? Yeah, Alan, my question is on section 11.
Section 11.
Yes, A and more specifically A and C, and this is pertaining to demographic diversity on board appointments. And if we can add that data collection in there, that language, and it sounds like there's a state law that was passed around diversity, collecting such a data. So we're not, I think, we're not discriminating or any of that. I think you had some concerns a while back when I asked the question about can we collect the, race and ethnicity and all that demographic data from our board members. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to amend section A and E to include demographic data in there.
Right. So I think we went back and forth a bit on that. And the conclusion was, yeah, we can collect that data. It just had to be careful on how you use it. And
So would it be appropriate somewhere to include that information collected in the application process will be implemented in accordance with ORS and leave it as that?
I'll
Because
take a look at that.
that's exactly what we're doing, right?
I can propose some language of that. The question I have is how far in the weeds do we want to get in this in these procedures, these overall procedures? So that's
Well,
up
I
to the
think-
board.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Fye, what I got out of the whole experience is that the state made changes, really good changes, and we hadn't yet had the opportunity to improve our practices in reflection of that. And now the CAO has had the team do just that. So I'm not sure if we need to call it out or just make sure we continue to stay diligent in following improvements that happen at the state level.
So, Madam Chair, Alan, Commissioners, currently on the board and commission's application piece, it states on there that the statistical data is voluntary from anyone filling out the application, and it will only be used for statistical purposes and not for any other purposes that may violate state or federal law. So it's explicitly stated there on our applications already.
Yes, which is in accordance with the ORS. What I thank you for that clarification, Mr. Moss. What we're talking about here is, I'm positing that we don't need to include that in our rules and procedures. We just need to focus on making sure we're doing it.
And that's up to the board to decide how they want to do that.
Ms. Angie, you had something to offer?
This is a practice, so I was just going to indicate what Alan said. It's really up to the board. If the board is comfortable knowing that this is the operational practice, or if you want this in the rules in addition to that. So.
Okay, it's a little confusing. I think if it takes us to include in our rules and procedures that we want this to be done, then by all means, let's put it in our rules and procedures. You know, if the organization is saying they're not going to do it unless we include it, then by all means, let's put it in. And let's put it in a way that is clear that in accordance with the ORS.
I agree.
Okay, so I don't know the best, if there's a section to add that in, or if it needs to be a new subsection.
I'll take a stab at it and get back to you with it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Fye. Commissioner Rogers.
Alan, this is to you. When these rules were written, very different time period. We had 0.8, and that would be at best chair position. We had 0.4 on the commission level. And so we didn't worry about a lot of these things because we had the administration who really was doing the daily operations. As the commission becomes full-time for those who are doing it, there's some provisions in section 4 that have to do with the chair having the ability to call all kinds of special meetings. That can be, in my opinion, nobody else can agree, and that's fine, but can be very blanket authority. It's too much blanket authority. I know there's a 72-hour clause. I know that there's a 20-day clause, but there are many times where we're seeing meetings that are called that I'm not sure meet all those criteria. They may for public notice, but I'm not sure within our board rules.
So all of the meetings that I have called in my 2 years have definitely been in accordance with these rules and procedures, as well as Oregon statute and rules. They've also been called for very specific purposes that were where time was of the essence. And we've agreed on those. We've posted it as such, mentioned it as such. So my apologies if you have been dissatisfied with any of those. I've not heard that previously. I don't take lightly the need to call these meetings and are the prior to CAOs that I've worked under, as well as our one county council over the last 2 years, knows that we've tried to work other options to make sure that we haven't needed to call special meetings.
Back to you, Alan. My question is that will there be, is it your department only advising certain members of the board? Are you advising us all? And do we, if we question that, or if we question the need, what's the process in the future?
So Roy, if I could answer, answer your question. So Kevin, you could move up just a little bit. It goes back to that regularly scheduled meeting. So the prior board, I'm sure you're probably part of it, Roy, you may remember this. They basically, the charter says you have to have regularly scheduled meetings. And so what this prior board did was that section I talked about, they added basically every day and be a regularly scheduled meeting. And so if the majority of the board is concerned about having meetings that are going to be regularly scheduled, you could remove that provision and change the date so that it would have to be on those dates, or you'd have to go through the more formal process of putting it on the agenda and voting on it unless there's an emergency. So, but so that's, it comes from the charter, Roy, and so that's where that authority lies.
Thank you, Alan.
Commissioners, any other questions or improvements you'd like to see made? No? All righty.
Okay, we'll make these changes. I'll send them out to you, and then we'll bring it back as a consent agenda item.
Sounds good. Oh, Commissioner Treese.
Can we quickly, I don't know if it's quickly, revisit the consent agenda item concept? I just want to, have we made these changes before and put it on as a consent item? It just makes me a little concerned about not having the transparency that we're all striving to have. And I just don't want it to appear that there's any issue there. And I'm just raising the question. It may be such minutia that it's best to be in the consent agenda. I just, a little
Well-
thing in the back of my head was ringing.
I
No,
can
that's,
tell you,
that's great. I'm glad you mentioned it. Alan, could you remind us all of the commission's right to call
Practice.
something up?
I'll just tell you what the practice has been, and it's a little fuzzy. What is a consent? What is an action? And typically, actions items are more significant items that require more debate about policy. And what that's been over the years has been somewhat fluid, and depending how busy the board's been partly, and how much time they have available. So, and again, for any consent agenda item, any commissioner can pull it off the consent agenda item and make it an action item too. So there is some fluidity there as well.
And I'm not suggesting that. I'm just raising the question, have we thought through this enough to determine it? Because I don't want to be the one that pulls it off of the consent agenda. I'd like to make sure that we all are, comfortable. I think I am. I just, with the changes to the charter that are coming up, with the salary commission work, with those types of things, I don't want any concern that the commission is changing making these adjustments inappropriately. That's my only issue.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts and possible concerns on that. The way that I've tried to balance the agenda time with the CAO in proposing them has been along the lines of, is this an item where we need a staff report to make sure that we're doing justice to the scope of work? And in other cases where it seems like our community would benefit from more information, or just knowing that we've spent time on an improvement area, or as mentioned, the salary commission, that's all new, right? Making sure that there's visibility beyond just our published agendas with information in our packets and so forth. So I think that the type of changes that we're talking about here are not ones of significance per se, but with the exception of the group change on testimony. So I'm glad that you've raised that. I think if what we always have the opportunity to do is, if we, particularly with our Zoom meetings, which will retain in a hybrid model, if we have folks signing up to testify on a matter or want to testify on a matter, or if we see the visibility of it through our constituent report, then we can just pull it off the consent agenda and put it on the action, right? We always have that available. In thinking out loud about this group stuff, the group change, I can go either way on that, consent or action. What are the wishes of the group?
Well, since no one else is talking, I think I'd like to, the people that are going to have the most concern about it are the people that we hear from anyway, right? I mean, that's the group, that group concept. I'd rather have it be an action item so that I just think it's, given the fact that the group that will be the most effective is what our most vocal group, I want it on the regular action agenda.
Sounds good.
No problem.
Great. Thank you. Anything else on?
Chair, I don't know if everybody else agrees.
I didn't hear anybody disagree, so we don't tend to be a bashful group. Okay, great. All righty then. How are we doing on time? It's 11:20. Commissioner Willie will be joining us at 1 o'clock. I didn't expect that we would be done with our morning agenda with our 3 items before 12, but we are. So we can break now for an early lunch and reconvene in the afternoon and pick up with the 3 topics that we have slated for the afternoon. Is everyone comfortable with that? Commissioner Fry's nodding her head. Commissioner Willie Rogers, you okay with that? Is that a head nod? Or
That was a head nod from the commissioner.
okay, all righty. Great. So we'll pause here in our agenda and reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Right. And you will come back on the separate Zoom 1 o'clock link that is on the webpage and in your calendars.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.